So, a very good morning to all of you who are here live for this Zoom. This is the fourth and final of our teachings on dying as best one can. If you're joining us on YouTube, then good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and just as warm a welcome. YouTube's a funny thing. When we have these series of teachings, usually the YouTube watches go down. Like if there were 4 teachings, you maybe get 200 for the first one, 160 for the second one, 120 for the third one, because people are either saying, oh, I've heard all this stuff before, or I'm not really interested, or whatever. This one, the first 2, they got the same number of views. But number 3, the last one, it went way up. I think it's 300 and something, a lot more. So anyway, YouTube's a mystery. So today we enter this brief overview of a very real and actually quite complex topic. So let's start. Let's start in the very, very best way. Let's start with bodhicitta. Let's start with a loving, kind, peaceful heart. Let's start with a mind set on all our lifetimes to come, a brilliant future of awakening, goodness, of power to help others, all the good things and all the bad things disappearing. So we take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment, through the practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these good things to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering. May they attain great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamavati shameta shatru om kurimam kurimarajite karota keyorite jovati oloyane beshuda nemale malapa naiye kukore katka grase grasana omuki paramuki amuki shamedawane sawa graha bandhanane grihitva Sava bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha savitva Buddha mudra nugatita sava mare butsarita parishuddhe Viga shantu sava mara kama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing ever present above our heads on lotus and moonseed. Through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. Thank you. So, dying. We moved forward quite quickly in our 5 powers last time. And we started entering into the details of what happens at death, physically, technically, in the mind. And we were looking at what is in the 6 bardos, bardo number 4, which is called the bardo of dying. It is this life coming to an end. Although in this course we're looking at dying as best one can, this end period of our life, we're also preparing for bardo 5, which is the called dharmata bardo, or true nature bardo, and for bardo 6, which some people call the bardo, which is called the becoming bardo in Tibetan, which is the period up to 49 so-called days before one takes birth again. So we started looking at that. But first, today, we need to zoom right out at the whole process of our Dharma journey, because in bardos 5 and 6, this is vital to understand. As many of you know from our previous courses, we are 2 things running parallel, 2 things that have run parallel since time immemorial. However many rebirths we've had, these 2 things have been running next to each other. Running next to each other and more or less completely isolated from each other. It's a bit like electric cabling. You have your outer casing, then inside you've got your live and your neutral. If they touch, it's not good news, usually. So we've had this casing of what is called in Sanskrit samtana. Samtana. It looks like the name of the rock group, Santana. That is what makes you and my stream of existence separate. You have your stream of existence from life to life, is what we're looking at here. One life will die, but then that same stream of ongoing karma will be reborn. That what isolates it from other people's stream of karma is called samtana. We talk about that as a stream of consciousness. And within that, which is a theoretician, it's not a thing, it's something that we have in theory. We just know that our streams of consciousness don't mix. It's not as though there's some kind of casing we can find in material life or in meditation where you can hack away at the casing and then all of a sudden you're joined up. It's a reality that we express as something that separates, that isolates us. It's a theoretical reality. But within it, there are the 2 real realities. One is our actual stream of consciousness, the play of karma, cause and effect, which is interdependent, which is impermanent, and always involves suffering. And then the other thing that's running parallel is the purity of our mind, which has always been there, totally pure, always has been, always will be. It is peace, it is love, it is compassion, it is the most wonderful wisdom, it is light, it is goodness. These are all the key words from our point of view to describe this changeless nature that runs parallel with our changing karmic nature. Anyone but an idiot would go for the Buddha nature because it's so wonderful. But we're all idiots. And so we get lost in distraction. And sometimes in the Dharma texts, it doesn't say idiots, although it does sometimes, but it says children, we're immature. So distraction, time wasting and so on, all of that gets us again and again. And we looked at this recently in the paramita of diligence. So now we're coming to the end of a life. A life is an opportunity. Buddhism doesn't talk about the meaning of life because meaning means, how can you say, somebody gave it a meaning, somebody gave you a life with a meaning. And it doesn't work like that. We talk more about possibility, opportunity. It comes down to the same thing, really, if we don't get too fussy about words. What's the whole point of having a human life? We could have escaped from the suffering and the impermanence and all the rest of it and gone into this perfect. It's called the great perfection, not for nothing. It's not called the great rubbish. It's not called the great half good, half bad. It's perfect. It's pure mind. It's so good. We've had an opportunity. We've met the teachings. We've been given the tools to make this true nature, who we really are, what we really are, to discover it, to be more and more it, and to dissolve away this personal stream, I almost said scream, of karma. So that's the big picture. It's what all of the Dharma teachings are about. So now, the bad news is the opportunity is coming to an end. Oh dear. And we're going to have to start all over again, be a baby and all of that kind of thing, grow up somewhere until, with a bit of luck, with a lot of luck, or really not luck, good karma, we end up where we are now and we can take it further. So that's the bad news. This opportunity, if we're dying, is coming to an end. But the good news, remember we'll explore a bit today, is that in this dying and immediately after death process, we have opportunities to integrate our true nature, Buddha nature, that you don't get in life. Wonderful, special opportunities. So for meditators, for those really seriously practicing Dharma, then what we are doing, and especially in Vajrayana Dharma, is there to prepare us for these very special opportunities that are coming up. So last time we got to, last week, this elements dissolving. Well, this will happen one way or another, and probably quite differently from one person to another. Like the earth element collapsing as your body gets weaker and weaker. In the end, you can't sit up without help or support and so on. And then these strange feelings, some people, they feel too light and they want lots and lots of blankets and bed covers. Some people, they feel, on the contrary, too heavy. They need fresh air. They need to throw all the covers off their bed. It varies so much. It might take weeks. It might take months. It might be very slow, or it might happen within a few days. But the earth element collapsing has the, what we say, symptoms, signs that we looked at last week. This is the beginning of the dying bardo, when the elements collapse. It's the counterpoint to conception, where when we study conception in terms of elements, we see how at the moment of conception, all the 5 elements are present, then how they develop in the womb. This is the far end of that process where everything that came together is going to fall apart. This is one of the most famous teachings of Lord Buddha. All coming together and construction ends in falling apart. All meeting ends in parting. All life ends in death. So the elements that came together at conception are now starting to fall apart. And that happens for everybody, one way or another. Now, what are we going to do as Buddhists to try and get some benefit out of this? Well, there's a couple of very good things we can do and that we can train now to do so that we have a reflex. So that when it happens, even if we're not feeling too good, even if we're not clear in our minds, even if we're exhausted and we can't draw on much energy. You know, sometimes to use your mind, you need a bit of physical energy while you're still alive. When your body is depleted, you can't put 2 thoughts together very well. But if we have a reflex, and we'll come back to this later, it's very important. We'll come back to this with Taisitupa later. If you have a reflex, then you have some chance. So we train now. If you have some connection, maybe not much knowledge, but some connection with Vajrayana, and you know something of the theory of the chakras, then we can do something with our chakras at that time that's very helpful. Now, there's a part of these teachings I'm skipping because unless you know more about Vajrayana tantric theory, it won't make much sense. But at the time of conception, what gets set into motion are the 5 main pranas, the 5 main energetic forces that govern our life. And they're called 5 winds, is another word. And they are associated with our 5 main chakras in the top of the head, in the throat, in the heart, in the navel, and in the, what we call it, sacral center. So when the earth element collapses, the earth element is associated with our navel. Oh, sorry, you can't see on the screen. I'm tapping my navel, but it's how to picture. So anyway, what can I do? I'm not going to stand up. I'd knock my chair over if I do. So anyway, it's associated with our navel chakra and with the Buddha Ratna Sambhava and the color gold or yellow. We did a course on the 5 Buddhas, 5 Buddha families, 5 Dhyani Buddhas. And so the Ratna family, the Ratna Sambhava, is associated with our navel chakra. So what can we do if you're dying and you realize, oh, this, you're weaker and weaker, you can't sit up, you have these signs that the earth element is collapsing, then we can imagine the earth element as golden light dissolving into our navel chakra, where there is the feeling of our guru, if you have a guru, as Buddha Ratnasambhava. Or if you're not familiar with the form of Buddha Ratnasambhava, you can just think of what Buddha Ratnasambhava really is, which is the pure counterpart of what for us is the earth element. In our stream of consciousness, we have all sorts of manifestations of earth element. In the Buddha nature, when the delusion of earth element, when the karmic, confused reality of earth element is gone, we discover that it was all the time Ratnasambhava energy, let's say. So we can imagine that the earth element that we've had since birth is dissolving into our navel chakra. There is, and this is so important, there is the presence of your guru. We're turning, what can you say, physical crumbling reality into recollection of our guru. That's useful. Our mind, instead of being with the misery of being weak and weaker and weaker, is thinking of our guru as Buddha in our navel chakra. And we let our awareness rest in there, in the golden light. Now, if you remember last week, which I'm sure you do, because you've been doing lots of homework, then the way it was expressed is that the earth element dissolves into the next one, the water element. So then we had the signs of the water element collapsing and the bodily fluids being out of control, and sometimes hallucinations of water or whatever they were. So when that is happening, then we imagine the water element dissolving into our heart center, where there is blue Buddha Akshobhya, and there is the, we call it the Vajra energy, Vajra family. But mainly we think again of our guru. Whether you can clearly visualize Buddha Akshobhya or not, it's the pure essence of the water element is dissolving in blue light in our heart center, and we keep our awareness with the guru in the heart center. So you're getting the picture now with each element. So then the water element next dissolves into the fire element. The fire element, the water already dissolved into the fire, now the fire element's dissolving into the wind element. It's disappearing, that's what it means. Earth element's power's gone, water element power's gone, fire element power. Then we imagine that this vitality, our bodily heat, the whole set of thermodynamic processes that transform food into energy. Fire energy is very much associated with blood, metabolic growth, taking in food, taking in oxygen, converting them into what sustains the body. It's the fire elements, the burning up, it's the conversion of what wasn't us. It was oxygen out there and it was food out there. You take in some petit pois, green petit pois, and you put them in, and then your body turns that into energy and into what sustains it. It spreads that all over the body through the blood. We look into this in such detail in Vajrayana when we got the time. So this fire element, which has been converting everything to keep us going, run out. Gas bottles run out. No more fire element. So the power of the fire element dissolves into the throat chakra as red light, and in your throat chakra is your guru as Buddha Amitabha, and all the power of the lotus family and so on that we studied in the 5 Buddha families. But again, this deterioration is where you're cold, your hands are getting cold, your body's losing its heat, your energies, and so on and so on. Instead of dwelling in that, we are remembering our guru and the throat center, Buddha Amitabha, lotus family. So now the fire element's dissolved, and now we've got wind dissolving into space. Now this is really where the dying bardo ends. Wind element goes, if you're thinking elements, you know there are usually 5, right? Earth, water, fire, wind, space. And actually usually there are 6. Number 6 is consciousness. So with the elements dissolving to the point of clinical death, we have 4 elements dissolving. When the wind element stops, so that's when our breathing gets raspy, when breathing stops. Then when that's happening, so you're there, your breathing's coming to an end, then we focus on the sacral center, and there's green light, there's Buddha Amoghasiddhi, and there's your guru as Buddha Amoghasiddhi, and we think of the collapse of breath, and our awareness, our concentration is there. So that's one thing we can do as we're aware that this physical life is coming to an end and we notice the elements collapsing. We can work with the chakras, guru recollection, the 5 Buddha families, and we can be, how can you say, in harmony with what's happening. We're not in conflict where it hurts and we're resisting and we don't want to die. We are dying. So then we remember our true nature, our Buddha nature. At the same time, what we can do, and which is very helpful, is, as always, throughout all these steps of our dying process, tonglen. We think of all the people and their suffering just now, as it's happening to us, who are losing their strength, whose bodily fluids are going wrong, they're losing, they're collapsing, they're scared. Very often in that time, hallucinations can start, for instance. People can remember the hurt they've caused. Their life can flash before them. They can be scared of what's happening. They can feel very unprepared. They can feel very sad for many reasons about their life. They can hallucinate. All sorts of things can happen. But it's not the best of times. It's not like a holiday in Ibiza. People are dying. It's hurting. It's not a nice process. So we think, if only, as I'm remembering my guru through the collapse of the elements, if only this joy, this goodness could be given to them, to reassure them, to help them be at peace, to be at ease, be in harmony. And if only their pain, their confusion, their fear, their hallucinations. If only I could relieve them of those, take them to me as the dark smoke, dissolve that in Buddha mind, and give them all the blessings we ourselves have experienced through the Guru, through the lineage, through the practice. So Tonglen in the dying bardo is where we are just now, and association with the 5 Buddha families. We can actually do that. This is important because it's doable. We can train for it. It won't take much training. It won't. You could sort this out in a week, probably. If you go away now, really think about it. 5 Buddha families, go back to Ken's courses. What were they all about? And the basic idea of is who we really are, Buddha. Buddha expressed through these 5 areas, 5 families, and so on. We can train for this and do it when it happens because we are still alive and we are a bit lucid. After that, bardos 5 and 6, dharmata bardo, becoming bardo, the training, if we're going to do something really, really helpful, takes much longer. It's really the result of a lifetime. Now, I was going to read it later when we come to it, but I think I'll read it now. It's a quote from Taisitupa, who was talking about the bardo. So where did Ken get his bardo teachings from? I got them live in, gosh, when was that? 1984, from Gyaltsab Rinpoche and Taisitupa both. So it's a very nice lineage. And one of the main things I realized is that this famous book, Tibetan Book of the Dead, is usually called Bardo Todro, Liberation Through Hearing, that lots of people read, use, is useless without the oral instructions that go with it. What goes into text usually is a lot of details that you might not be able to remember. But most texts are designed as a support material for live transmission. So especially about becoming bardo and so on, the live transmission is very, very important. So you get the feel of what it's like, which you don't get from the book. You really don't. What the book describes day after day is what can happen in a second for most people. It's a very vivid experience, but it comes and goes. The rest of that so-called day is going to be wild wanderings. So how the wild wanderings feel like is different. So this is a teaching Taisitupa gave about the 6 bardos in Washington quite some time ago. So he's talking about the becoming bardo. The same applies for the dharmata bardo. He says, it is technically possible to have awareness at that time. My example for how it might be possible is something like this. I'm in an aeroplane at 35,000 feet above the ground. And then someone puts a paper in my left hand and a pen in my right hand, and then throws me out the aeroplane without a parachute. And I'm supposed to write the most beautiful poetry before I hit the ground. Theoretically, it would be possible. It would be, but very, very difficult. So to remember we are dead, and to meditate, and to realize or be aware of the nature of mind, or to have compassion for all sentient beings, or to have devotion to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the lineage in that state of mind would be like that. It would be like being thrown out of an aeroplane and writing poetry on the way down. It won't be easy. But if we practice now, then it becomes easier. If we get acquainted with these states, these meditations, these contemplations, and this is the point, if they become habit, he says habit, we might use the word reflex, then it will happen that way. Because whenever something really terrible happens to someone, a kind of serious accident or disaster, we will call our mother or God or Buddha. So similarly, what he's talking about is, because of social media, people say it a lot now, more now, but this thing of reflex. Oh my God. It's not you think, what am I going to say here? It's something, oh my goodness. Or sweet Jesus. Or mum, mother. People cry out, like you did when you were a kid. Mum. It's what comes out naturally. And of course, in Dharma, we call out to the Guru. One beautiful thing in long retreats, some long retreats, is to wake you up in the morning. The person who's the best singer sings calling the Guru from afar. So you wake up to these wonderful verses which are calling the Guru from afar. Calling out to the Guru is the word in Tibetan Buddha means calling out, summoning. So he says, so similarly, the same thing can happen after the mind separates from the body. Because this disembodied state, after the separation of mind and body, is the most extreme state of mind, one will automatically turn to what one believes in the most. So in this way, if we have a strong daily Dharma practice, in this way it will be possible for us to enter into proper awareness at that time and to attain enlightenment. That's quite possible. Or a very excellent rebirth. So the reason I've gone to that quote now is that the dying bardo, as the elements collapse, is something happening while we still have some degree of lucid control of our mind. Whereas in the next two bardos, really it's only our reflex reactions that can help us. You don't have this lucid choice. You're on autopilot. You're on knee-jerk reaction to circumstances. That's why I'm saying it now. So then, what's happened? Earth, water, fire, wind have collapsed. And then we saw last week, perhaps following that, perhaps to some, so that's what, 4 elements collapsing. I'm trying to work my fingers out here. 4 elements collapsing, 3 experiences, white, red, black. Perhaps the 3 experiences overlap, or at least the first 2. And one can be clinically dead and revived. And people can come back from being clinically dead, but revived with stories of going towards the white light and so on, but not the third, the black experience. If that happens, you're clinically dead and Buddhist dead, and you can't revive. That is when the space element dissolves, is finished. So our 5 elements dissolve. Last week we looked at these 3 experiences of white, red, and black, and the way they are described is that our prime consciousness is in our heart center. And so with the white experience, say before that, what we see at the time of conception and then in the womb, the development of the body, is a tension develops that lasts all of our life between what's called the white component at the top of our head and the red component, which is down at the bottom of our sacral center. It's like batteries, positive, negative, there's a tension. And in between these two, we have what's called the main energy, main prana, called life force prana, going up and down this central channel. So anyway, we're not studying that here. You study it sometimes when you're doing Vajrayana practices. But the point is, this white force has been up there all the time at the crown of your head. And now, because this life's come to an end, it's sinking down to the heart center. So from the heart center's point of view, it's kind of coming closer and closer. That's why people have the feeling of heading up towards the light. In fact, the white is coming down towards this primal consciousness in the heart center. Yeah. White element. And then the red element, which has always been at the bottom in our lower chakra, is arising up. So to say a few words about those experiences, then along with this white element, remember the white and the red, they hold a tension, and in between, it's our karma wind. That karma wind, that karma energy is like the program of this life. If you've got a program running on a computer and it's putting stuff on your screen and through your loudspeakers and so on, our screens are 5 senses: seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, tasting. That whole program of this life's experience, the karmic wind, come to an end. It's like in the cinema, the end, story's over, credits are rolling, the end, that's it. So these two energies, this white energy really holds as part of its karmic package the energies of aversion, hostility, all the flavors of that, all the things in our life that have made us at odds with other people, with situations, with our own body, with the story that we're going through. What made it feel uncomfortable, made you want to not have that, push away energy. So in some texts, it describes 33 aspects of this aggression, conflict, rejection, aversion energy. To stop. The feeling is incredible. It's why people who come back from resuscitation with that going to the white light, they felt so good. Because that background tension that's part of your karma for this life that's been there, whether it's activated, and you're actually, it doesn't mean you're actually averse, you're actually in conflict. It's the potential for it that you carry that can be triggered by people doing things, saying things, can be triggered by the weather, can be triggered by taste of food, can be triggered by the bite of a mosquito. We carry that potential. So that shuts up. The feeling is amazing. That famous question somebody asked Sakon Rinpoche, what's it like when it stops? For a moment, that stops. Now, stop isn't the correct word linguistically. It pauses. It pauses. It will come back in the sixth bardo. But just for now, it stops, and the feeling is amazing. But at the same time, everything's collapsing. So there's another feeling along with this, which is a feeling of vagueness. It's like the precision of life, let's say, is much vaguer. Things are much vaguer. So there's this kind of letting go, vagueness, and a huge relief, and going towards a white light feeling. If it's in the classical sequence, which is not always the case, then the next thing is the red experience. And with the red experience, then the lifelong desire, attachment, all that pole of energy temporarily ceases, goes on, or disappears. And there's a relief, because why do you desire something? You don't desire what you've got. You desire it because you feel incomplete. You think, if I had that, I'd be better off. I'd be happier. A feeling of incompleteness, a feeling of wanting, that there's something out there that you're missing. This kind of feeling is there all the time. So of course, if in life something crosses your path that corresponds to that feeling, like if it's a lovely, juicy, fresh apple, the first one of the season, you go, something rises up from within you, or another human being, or whatever it is, something triggers that, but we carry the latency all the time. Our Dharma path is about understanding this, working with it. It's huge. But for a moment, this is stopping. And it says, the word that goes with this in the text is quite interesting. It says fireflies. Poor fireflies, they're disappearing from our world. Fireflies and glowworms. And I think you're a lucky human being if you've seen some, because they're pesticides and other things taken so many away. But it's not like all of a sudden you hallucinate fireflies. What it means is like the firefly light is on, off, on, off, on, off. Now, because the whole thing is collapsing, we're in and out of consciousness. So although there is the relief and there is this actual experience of red light, redness, let's say, rather than red light, redness, it's mixed with unconscious, in, out. The black experience is when the white and the red have met at your heart center, and all the karmic energy that made this life's story and programming is definitely finished. So there's nothing happens there. Nothing happens there. So now what can we do at this stage? I'm still in this dying bardo. Well, mainly through the power of reflex, but it says, if you can, as you're approaching the white light, then any teachings you've had on luminosity, clarity, dream yoga, illusory body, any of these teachings whereby we realize the void yet vivid nature of appearances, how they are like dreams, like rainbows, like mirages, and so on. But not so much the words where we're telling ourselves, it's like a mirage, it's like a rainbow, but where you actually, oh my God, it's like a mirage. It's like a, when we were talking before the talk started about how people come and go in your life. They come, they go. It's like a rainbow. They're there so vivid, and it's gone, dissolved. So when this is real for you, that's what realize means, when this becomes real for you, then even though this white light and the relief is so wonderful, we realize it's void, yet clarity nature, the union of voidness and clarity, all the teachings we had on that, all the meditation we did, that made that very familiar. Because in those meditations, we know that the nature of this mind, which is voidness and clarity all the time, is Buddha. So the real nature of voidness and clarity in Vajrayana becomes our Guru's presence. Excuse me. So at the time of white light, that's something we might be able to do, and it will be very liberating. Very liberating. With the red energy coming up from below the sacral center, any work you've done transforming sacral energy, bliss, and so on, will be very helpful there. So as one's having the red experience, then one can transform one's sexual creative energy into loving compassion for all beings. So any work that one's done on that will be very, very useful at that time. At the black moment, there's nothing you can do. There's nobody there, there's nothing happening. So there's no instruction, sort of. No instruction. So now you're dead. Dying bardo, finished. When I run this course live, and I don't think we have time to do it today anyway, for the last session, I say come prepared to lie horizontal, and we're going to do a simulation of dying. I can't remember if I did that in the last Zoom course. I think I did. In this one, we won't have time. So if you're really interested, go back to the previous Dying as Best One Can Zoom course, and you can go through it. So now, before we leave that, in more practical terms, because we're looking at the dying, bardo, what can you do? It says, ideally, if you can, die sitting up. So if we look, for instance, at the death of the first Akon Rinpoche, when he was dying, his main, he's a friend, Dharma companion, he managed to ask him to help him sit up and to whisper some words, a particular text of bodhicitta in his ear. And that's how he died, sitting up, and his body stayed in meditation for many days after that. These days, in our own death circumstances, such a thing may not be possible. But in terms of these energies and the white and the red and what we can do, it will be good. That's one thing we can do. Another thing we can do, if you have that meditation practice and experience of of being with the Guru in your heart center, then even if you don't feel capable of doing the things with the golden light and the blue light and the red light and the green light and so on, if you, as much as you can, as many times as you can, you go deep in your heart center and then deeper and deeper and deeper inside. It's like going to the within of the within of the within of the within, like Russian dolls. Deeper and deeper within to your heart center and your Guru's blessing. And just let all the dying process happen out there. It's like you've gone into a bomb shelter. Your body's dying. There are experiences going on. People are saying things. Forget it, withdraw, go deeper and deeper inside to your Guru's presence in the heart. Like sometimes we do in Tonglen when we take in the Guru and we work from the heart center, like that. But then deeper and deeper inside it, that's something you can do at this time. And sitting up will be actually quite helpful for that. If you can't do sitting up, then there is a posture that's recommended. And we ask people, we primed them beforehand, if it's possible. Of course, if you're in a hospital or an ambulance or something, it won't be possible. But if it's possible, then you lie on your right side. And if you look at statues of the Buddha passing into parinirvana, you'll see the Buddha lies on the right side with the right hand on the right cheek and with the left hand on the left thigh. So the Buddha is completely horizontal, lying on the right side. So we are like that, but unlike the statues, what we are going to do is to block the right nostril with the little finger of the right hand, so that we're only breathing through the left nostril. That's helpful. And then we do Tonglen, thinking of all those dying just now. And as much as we can, taking in as dark smoke all of their suffering and confusion and ignorance, remembering Buddha, and then breathing out white light to help them all. You will die on an out breath. If you're sending white light of love and help to all sentient beings, that's a beautiful way to go. And it will really make your ongoing journey so much more productive, positive, helpful for you and for everyone. So sometimes I talk people through that. We gradually go through these 5 powers. Remember from the beginning, sowing positive seeds, letting go, stuff, people, one's own story. We go through the power of aspiration, long term, thinking of your whole journey to Buddhahood, the 2 bodhicittas. We go through the power of renunciation. You rotten, dirty ego, get out, never come back. And no, definitely not. Nothing to do with you anymore. Any future life. Bye-bye. Gone. Like that. Power of renunciation. Then now the power of propelling intention, which we're applying for the 3 bardos. Dying bardo, dharmata bardo, becoming bardo. And so we go through that, and then through this actual dying process, and gradually we go through the elements dissolving, and we end up breathing. I tell people, breathe in, and breathe out with all the love and care for those other people dying. Yes? No, you did. People usually get quite into it, and it's kind of, there's a lightness afterwards. So now the next bit we have to do, 2 bits, dharmata bardo So now we're looking at what happens, but as we saw with Taisitupa, our hope for marvelous liberation in that time will depend on our lifetime of habits. It won't be something new or newly learned that we can do on the spot. Maybe, but less likely. So, sorry, there's one more thing I need to add. This sitting up, lying down, really it's your last breaths that time. If you have a companion who can tell you the right things, remind you of the right things. Usually they say whisper in the ear, but you don't need to whisper, but it's so that it's very intimate, so that as you're fading away and all this stuff's happening, somebody's telling you, well, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there's a lot of details about what they can tell you. But basically, what somebody needs to remind us of, or we need to remind ourselves of, is don't worry. It's just your mind. It's just your mind. Your mind is about to go to some very interesting places. And it will seem overwhelmingly huge, so powerful, so unimaginably intense. Remember, it's just your mind. And your mind is really Buddha. Whatever happens, let it come, let it go. Don't be afraid. Know that who you truly are is Buddha. You are good. You are kind. You are pure. You are peace. This kind of thing we need to know, because we're about to go through a whole load of experiences and hallucinations. And that's the key thing to know. Now, of course, if we can do this in life, well, that's wonderful. But the problem is in life we get distracted. So distracted. But if we can know that everything is the play of the mind and follow Buddha's teachings in all their detail about how that works, know they're impermanent, they're suffering, all those things, and that our mind is really Buddha, and that you are basically good and kindness and love. Now, this really works. This really works. Even in the middle of intense hallucinations, it's possible to suddenly find that key. In the middle of paranoia, in the middle of vivid, disturbing hallucinations, you can just remember, this is my mind, and you concentrate, focus your mind on all the goodness and peace that you really are. You give rise to love, you give rise to kindness and wisdom. It changes everything. It's like twiddling the control knobs. This really works. This really works. Now, this is the experience I know from my own meditation practice. People who go into bardo retreats can have that. So let's have a bit of fun, just for a few seconds. A bit of fun. Story that Akon Rinpoche often told. His monastery, Dharmacharya, was one of the few in Tibet that had a 49-day dark retreat. It's a whole series of yak hair tents, one inside another. There's total darkness, and the person with the instructions is left alone and programmed to go through the 49 days of bardo experience. So there's no day, night. There's just food that's put in an in-between place. You don't see or talk to the attendant. So you quickly lose track of time and space. It's sensorial deprivation in a way. So there was one Lama who was in there, been in there a while. Then he shouts out to the attendant, come quickly, come quickly. There's a leopard in here. I've got it, I've pinned it down. And so, of course, there are leopards in Tibet, snow leopards. And so the attendant comes rushing in, probably with a candle or a light, because it's dark in there. And he sees the yogi, the meditators, holding his knee very, very strongly. He says, I've got it, don't you know? He'd hallucinated that his knee was a leopard. Leopard's quite scary. So, but there can be much, much more than this, much, much more. So, whatever happens, we need to know it is just our mind left to itself, and we need to home in on the basic goodness, purity, all the qualities of Buddha that we really are. Now, if you do this through the power of habit, you might never be reborn again. Whatever the power of your karma, this could lead to liberation. And even if you are reborn, to such different lives than you would have had because of the power of your existing karma. It's an opportunity. So the simple version is to recognize that it's all your mind, and that your mind is basically Buddha. Then whatever transmission you've had in this life, empowerments, can re-emerge at that time, and you'll realized that the Lama who gave you the empowerment was much more than you ever realized at the time. They'll be there for you, with you, helping you to Buddha. So much of this help that we've received in life, and that we've kept at bay because of our samsaric tendencies, we've only let it trickle in a little bit, can come through at that time as liberating blessing. So that's the main message, that somebody can tell us as we are dying. Best we can tell ourselves. So I spent nearly all of today on this dying bardo. The dharmata bardo is in two parts. You can read about it in Punlop Rinpoche's book, The Mind Beyond Death, that I recommended earlier. There's another book, if you want lots of details and scriptural stuff, that's no longer in print, so there aren't that many copies around, is this one. It has different covers, but it's called The Mirror of Mindfulness, and it's by Tsele Natso Rangro. This is an excellent work, really excellent. So now the Dharmata bardo, what's happened? You're dead. But your mind is still inside your body. Whatever that means, you can't find mind. Nobody ever found mind. It's not like it's a little ball of light or something, but practically it's still inside the body. The black experience has just happened. The Dharmata experience, which follows, is in two parts. Dharmakaya, Dharmata, Sambhogakaya, Dharmata. Dharmakaya is formless. It is the absolute pure ground of mind, from which everything that ever happened anywhere to everyone has manifested. And that everything that ever happened anywhere to anyone has dissolved into. This ground of mind is called alaya, not alaya vijana. Alaya, pure ground of mind. So those experienced meditators at this time who know this pure ground of mind, Dharmakaya, no form, no shape, no Buddha manifestation, nothing, the ground, like the blank sheet of paper, like the screen before the pixels are illuminated. You can dissolve into that and become Buddha. If in this life you have the experience of Dharmakaya through transmission from your guru, you recognize the Dharmakaya nature of your mind, and you can stay in that state, then depending on how stably and how long you can stay in that pure Dharmakaya, pure form, then that's how much chance you have of becoming Buddha there and then, and your whole story of rebirth is finished. It's the most wonderful opportunity. There is the word light. It's called in Tibetan osal. It's translated as clear light. So of course, because we read English, we think of light. Now, actually, that term does not mean light, which is very helpful. Actually, it means sal. It's sal. Sal means clear. So it means as clear as when a bright light is shone. You know, it's like if you want to thread a needle and it's dark and you can't really see to do it, you need to go over to a lamp and then you can see very clearly what's going on and so on. But it's not about light as such. Light, form, shapes, and so on, that's something else. This is about your mind's total clarity. Clarity of Buddha that knows everything, is one with everything. So when we're alive, we can have that experience, which is known as the child light, the child clarity. It's limited because we're in a body. Our body is like a damper that limits that experience. And of course, the body gets hungry, body needs to go to the toilet, and bodies help us meditate, but they also distract us. Now your body's dead. So it says the child light can meet with the mother light, which is Buddha mind, everywhere, everything. It's not an experience of Buddha mind. It's not a moment of Buddha mind. It's the real thing forever. So if we have cultivated Dharmakaya, Shunyata, meditation stably enough, then that is the most wonderful opportunity. Immediately after the black moment, dissolving into the ground fabric of everything, Buddha. If that doesn't happen, if you're not that experienced a meditator, the next aspect of dharmata, bardo, is sambhogakaya, which is where this basic clarity of mind manifests all of its qualities as Buddhas, and in particular, 5 Buddha families. So the next step is for that to manifest. How you doing? He says, okay. I'm trying to pack a lot in, so but I do want to read you something about this. Okay, so we just had, and let's assuming it didn't quite happen, the Dharmakaya Dharmata Bardo. If one is not liberated at this point, then at the end of space dissolving into luminosity, which is, or clarity, I prefer clarity. The translator here says luminosity, clarity. So now our 5th element has dissolved into mind's clarity, then at this instant the wrathful Heruka deities with numerous heads wearing various ornaments filling the entire world manifest. The spontaneous sound of dharmata will roar like 1,000 thunderclaps, and colors and lights will ignite like a hailstorm of weapons. It's quite terrifying. Amid this immense terror, without recognizing one's essence, one becomes panicked and faints. When one has emerged from the faint, all the above has completely vanished, and the peaceful deities gradually manifest. Then, this bit's nice, you can relax now, the wrathful ones have gone, right? Then all the perceived objects, such as earth, stones, mountains, and rocks, totally devoid of materiality, become experienced as the nature of rainbow light, completely clear and shining, vast and free from obstruction, brilliant and magnificent. They manifest with a nature that transcends all limitations. At this point, internally, one feels like one still has the body of one's former life, completely pervading space in all directions, above and below. Countless rainbow lights in the form of 5-colored spheres manifest, and within each of them are innumerable peaceful deities of the Vajradhatu, such as the 5 families of the Buddhas, the male and female bodhisattvas, all with beautiful expressions and dressed in a way that's totally captivating to behold. Extremely fine rays of light extend from each of their heart centers and connect to your own heart center. All of these manifestations seem completely ordered, and from the rays connected to one's heart, countless fine spheres will also be seen to emanate, and then all of those forms dissolve into oneself. Their luminosity is dissolved into unity. After that, unity dissolving into wisdom appears. So consciousness is dissolved, space is dissolved into luminosity or clarity. Clarity is dissolved into unity. Now unity dissolves into wisdom. And then, I keep reading, from one's heart center and into the space above, blue, white, yellow, and red lights shine forth, one above the other, like extended banners. Each one is adorned with spheres of light of corresponding color, which is again decorated with smaller spheres. It's like the parasol of peacock feathers. They appear splendidly above oneself in full 5 colors. This is called the inner path of Vajrasattva. It's the light path of the 4 wisdoms combined. The green light path does not appear owing to the lack of all accomplishing wisdom, because one has not perfected the power of practice. So then afterwards, I stopped the reading there. This dissolves into the experience of the Vijadaras. One experiences the 5 super wisdoms. It's Sambhogakaya. If one can recognize and dissolve into any of that, again, you're liberated. It's a wonderful opportunity. This is why in Vajrayana practice we do these visualizations of lights, of us making offerings, of lights coming, lights dissolving into us in various ways. In Vajrayana practice, we work with these little balls of light in various ways. Vajrayana practice is very vast. It has different levels, outer, inner, secret, most secret. So if one has the habit, at that time, it's like, whoopee, it's what you've been working with, meditating on, visualizing, all of a sudden it's real, it's actually happening, and all the feel of the Buddha's goodness, presence, kindness, blessing You just dissolve so happily. That's it. There's nothing, no further to go, no rebirth. So, bad news, you're dead. Good news, there are these opportunities. If in life we have prepared, then these can be wonderful, but you won't be like now. You won't be able to say, oh, this is the colored spheres, and dissolve into them. Either you'll do it as a reflex action or not. That's it. So then, if that hasn't worked, well, we've got one last chance, and now we've got the sixth bardo, the becoming bardo. And so if those haven't worked, then at one point the mind will leave the body. The person presence leaves the body. It's just a corpse after that. When we study this in more detail, we'll see how it seems to leave the body through one of 9 apertures, like the nostrils, the mouth, the ears, and so on. How that's already an indication of where you'll be reborn in your next life. Anyway, the mind leaves the body. The feeling of you is the feeling of the previous life. And then there will be the bardo days of experience. Now, these are called days, but the word day means period. They might last a human day. They might go by much more quickly than that. They may last many years. People can get stuck in the bardo from our point of view. So for the first half of this period, which it says can be up to 49 periods of experience, let's say, it could be just 7. Whatever it is, up to halfway through it, you'll start off feeling like you felt in your previous life, arms, legs, even though you don't have arms and legs. That's what you feel like. It's like in a dream. And when you're dreaming, you can feel like yourself. And that gradually fades away. And then from the beginning of the second half, you start to feel like how you're going to be reborn. And that karmic programming is starting to kick in with its various feelings. So if you feel more and more flappy like this and beaky, you might be going to be reborn a bird or whatever. That's in general. And what's going to happen is the becoming bardo. Now it's called bardo for 2 reasons. Bardo means between. Bar means between. It's between the previous life and the next life in linear time. So it's what happens between the end of one life and the next. That's easy. But in a different way, it's between constricted reality and everything. And just now, we're all restricted by this body. We can only see what these eyes see and so on. We're very limited by this body. We're inextricably attached to our biology and our brain and everything. It's part of what we are when we're alive. Now that the mind has left the body, it's between constricted reality and everything. Anything is possible. Where your mind directs itself is where it goes, which would be fun if we were sitting at the controls. You could woo and go where you wanted and have experiences you could never have as a human being. We're not sitting at the controls. At the controls is all of our consciousness programming. So the main thing that I learned from Gyatso Rinpoche and Taisitupa about the bardo is that it's like dream. You know, when we dream at night time, anything could happen. You can become anyone. You can be anywhere. Outrageous things can happen. Dreams can be more beautiful than any of your waking life. They can be more scary than any of your waking life. So just like when we dream, if you don't do lucid dreaming and program dreaming, ordinary people, when they dream, it's your subconscious programming, it's your consciousness stream programming that takes you here, takes you there, and so on. We are not in control. This is the core quality of becoming bardo. We don't have control. As human life, waking state bardo, we have control. Dying bardo, we have some control. But here, we're on autopilot. Only reflexes can help us. So we go through a period of intense hallucination. At the same time, the experiences are very vivid. It's like being on LSD. Sounds can be hundreds, thousands of times more powerful. Sensations, vibrations, feelings, what this strange journey takes us to can feel so intense. If we are drawn to people, like for instance, at the beginning of this period, we can well be drawn towards our relatives, our funeral, what's happening. And what we feel can be so very intense and confusing. Sometimes you don't know you're dead. There isn't this lucidity. We think, okay, now I'm dead. This is bardo. All right, they're burying me. Boring. Okay, where do I want to go? Mount Kailash. Woomph, here we go. It won't be like that. It will be coming, what they're doing, what they're doing to my body, what they're doing with my possessions, and why can't they hear me and see me? And so our mind is drawn, and then you suddenly think of something else, maybe some place you were, and you're there. You're actually there. People who are psychic and sensitive can feel people in this state. Oh, there's somebody here. And remember in the early years, we had a very nice old man who was Kenneth, his name was, and he was all the time talking to beings that we couldn't see. And sometimes he'd tell us, sometimes he'd be quite surprised. People whose minds were out of their body, people in the bardo state. Anyway, so our mind can go to all sorts of places. It's very vivid. The experience can be hundreds of times more powerful, and it does not stop. There's no rest. You know, our dreams at nighttime, they last a few seconds. Imagine 49 days of non-stop dreaming, hallucinating. 49 days of uncontrolled LSD. So during that time, at various points, and this is what the Tibetan Book of the Dead tells us, there are moments, glimpses of Buddhas, of pure mind. And we can, if something in us remembers, join the Buddha then, and either become liberated or partially liberated or make a big difference to our rebirth. Buddhas will appear because our whole sensorial system is so intense, as such vivid lights that most people can't take it. It's scary, it's too vivid. They shy away and they go towards what's called the lesser lights, which seem doable. And these are the lights associated with the 6 realms of existence. So the story of the becoming bardo can be very complicated. They're all based on 13 different lineages of teaching transmissions that came from the Dharma, the buried texts from Guru Rinpoche. They all tell basically the same story of what happens between lives. Now, it's not for me to question that. And that's what all Tibetan traditions use. Those 13 traditions are basically the same story about what happens between lives from Guru Rinpoche's teachings. Modern research would seem to say it's basically like that, but these, like you say, that then you will see this Buddha for a moment, and most people will be overpowered by the light and turn away from it and turn towards another light and so on. Whether it will be like that or not, I don't know, but the research where children have told their in-between life memories seems to show that it can be anything from absolute hell in between life. It can be like a brief stay in paradise, where it's, when you die, you go to somewhere very peaceful, very beautiful. And you stay there, and then some pull tells you it's time to be reborn again, and you're reborn again. My job's to give you the Tibetan teachings. So if we had another couple of hours, we could go through a lot that is said about these 49 possible periods of experience, the lights that emerge, how we're drawn towards certain things. But at the end of it, when you're already feeling much more like your next incarnation, you have one last possibility to do something through reflex. For me, it's a bit like an emergency stop. When you're learning to drive, maybe they don't do that anymore. But when I learned to drive, you had to learn how to suddenly brake and clutch in an emergency, what to do, stop suddenly. So you can be aware of your future parents making love. And so like if it's a couple of donkeys, you might not want that. And there will be a reflex which is not going there, I'm not going there. And it's so I'm thinking of something I can't share, but it's a sudden stop in the process, and where you don't get drawn into that. It's intense. It's intense. You feel the passion of the lovemaking. It's really big, all 360-degree Dolby surround experience that you want to get into. So if it's fortuitous human parents, then, and you realize that's happening through the power of past teachings, you can pray to be a bodhisattva in that life and go there. If it's animal rebirth or spirits or something else, you don't want to go there. You can resist from the depths of your mind's programming. You can resist. It's the last chance to do something in the bardo. So there are lots of translations of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's Selin Nasot, Randro's text. There's lots of stuff you can access online in literature and so on about this becoming bardo. But basically because you can't do anything about it except what you do through reflex reaction. Then I've not talked a lot about it today. So now our 5 powers, according to Atisha's teaching, we've got one left, which is the power of habituation. And that's what I've been talking about today. If, while you're alive, you have the habit of Tonglen, you have the habit of saying Om Mani Padme Hum, you have the habit of seeing purity, you have the habit of seeing your yidam, of dissolving lights, of Guru Yoga, all of these things change us from within. When they've changed us deeply enough, the real reward will come, not just in this, but will come in the dharmata bardo and the becoming bardo. So the power of habituation, the things we do now for the rest of our life, They are our best friend, all the Dharma things, all the good actions. They're the sowing positive seeds, and all the rest is habituation is the best thing we can do. And then the other things we looked at are what we can do in the last weeks and months. So I've really gone beyond the time, but we've covered a lot of the basics, I think. And now we should dedicate. Now, today is exactly a year since our dear Dharma friend Nini passed away. So I'd like to dedicate, especially, of course, we dedicate for everybody, always, but we can dedicate especially for Inni. Maybe, I know from speaking with her, she really did not want to be reborn. She wanted Dewa Chen. She really wanted to be in a place of pure mind and to help everyone from there. She was a bit disgusted with material life. So wherever she is just now, let's dedicate for her. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained by the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every being become free from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen, and may its development know no setbacks. May it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. And I dedicate very especially to each and every one of us here. We're all going to die. When that time comes, may these teachings be of great, great use to you. Thank you. So over to you. I don't know if you have any comments or questions.
Ken,
Hi, Charlie. Yeah.
Just to share a lucid dream that I had, that I died, and I was standing somewhere. I was standing, I don't know, on a road in a bare kind of countryside, and I realised I was dreaming. I said, I'm dead, you know. But I was conscious, you know, and realising, you know. I says, what do I do now? You know, what do I do? And says, well, you've learned that if you find yourself in this situation, you know, what to do. You should focus on practice or whatever, you know, but don't wander away anywhere. You know, you should use this opportunity. I said, oh well, this is great. And I looked. I says, I can go straight to the Pure Lands. And I looked ahead, and I seen what might have been the Pure Lands, like snow-covered mountains, beautiful sky, etc. And I says, right, I'll go there. That's what I should do. So I started walking along, and then I says, wait a minute. I says, I can do anything. I don't need to walk. I can fly to the Pure
Well,
Lands.
exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so I floated about 12 feet in the air, and I was preparing to fly to the Pure Lands. And I came down to the ground with a thump, and Akong Rinpoche was standing above me, and he looked down and he said, "You don't get it that easy."
Yeah. So you've had a bit more life to go through, but it's a wonderful subconscious flag that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, your heart's in the right place, Charlie. It's wonderful.
Yeah, so I have to do like all this, probably go through all the stuff you're talking about today.
Yeah. You're on
You don't.
extra time. You're on extra
Yeah,
time.
bit of overtime.
Score some goals.
Okay, thank you.
Ken, could I ask a question?
Of course, Marilyn. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the difference between the lights at the chakras and the white and the red components?
Yeah, they're different. I mean, the white and the red components, what can you say? I don't know a lot about this. I mean, and it's more the sort of stuff ideally you'd work really with. I'm sure if you were Milarepa with Naropa, you're actually dealing with it, the energy, the presence that's there. But that white and red tension is described as something as a genetic inheritance from the father and the mother. So it's a biological. I think tension is the word that's used. I talked quite a bit about this with Khenpoken to say what's really going on here, because he was both a doctor and a Rinpoche. And one way of seeing it is the tension between mind and rational life, control, those kind of things, which is usually represented as the male component, that's the white bit. And the red part is the intuitive, biological, not, can't say not rational, not logical, but that different thing. So all of our life, we are a mind in a body. It's like mind and body, except they become inseparable. And so the mind influences the body influences the mind, if we put it in everyday language. And that genetic inheritance is the hallmark of all of this life, and that tension is there. And that tension is, it's like the electricity that's making the karma we had for this life, the whole story, all of those thousands and thousands of superimposed stories work through our central channel, which means that it influences all the other channels. So that's the overall picture. Then within that, the 5 chakras work more or less. Sometimes they're very powerful, sometimes they're very present, sometimes there's much more emphasis in one or the other. Quite what that means, we need to study the Vajrayana teachings about the chakras and what they control, how they relate the microcosm that we are to the macrocosm of the universe we experience. And then we start to see how they're impermanent, they're changing stories, the 5 chakras, whereas this white and red tension is the overall, this life programming in which they are acting. I don't know if that helps a bit, but
Thank you.
but the colors, it's a bit confusing because usually the white chakra is the crown chakra, and here we've got the white energy at the top, but it's not the same down the bottom. Down the bottom, this green chakra, and we've got the red energy, which is usually up in the throat. So throat chakra, so it's not the same.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ken, could I ask something?
Sure. Hi, Dorcas.
Hi, thanks.
There's just a couple of quick things. So one was, so if you don't remember to call the guru at the time, does the guru know that you're dying, that you're in the bardo? And the other one was because when my dog died, I think there was the red drop came from the nose, and I just wondered where would that signify that she might have ended up, if you mentioned.
No, usually those fluids leaving the body is a sign that the black phase has happened. And the white, the red, the black is accompanied sometimes by the bodily fluid loss. Does the guru know? A real guru knows. There's one story, or two stories from 16th Karmapa. One is when one of the Chensi Rinpoches, I think Dugo Chensi Rinpoche, was traveling from East Tibet to the Karmapa's Supu Monastery, which is in central Tibet. It's a couple of months' journey by foot. And the Chensi Rinpoche was traveling with his brother. Unfortunately, his brother died halfway along the journey. The brother happened to be, he wasn't a monk actually, he was a lay person, but he'd been very close to the 16th Karmapa. They were buddies, if you put it that way. And so I think they cremated him and took his remains. They thought when we arrive in Supu. And so when they got to Supu and saw the 16th Karmapa, then Dugo Chensi went in to see him. And the Karmapa said, I know. He said, he came to me a month and a half ago, so whenever it was, that he'd actually died. And he said, I looked after him. So that meant that even though they hadn't got word to the Karmapa or anything, the Karmapa knew that he died. There's a similar story, shorter time delay. It's when one night the Karmapa suddenly told his, because 16th Karmapa, I was with him for quite a while. He barely slept at night. Sometimes it was 1 hour, half an hour. We needed a whole team of attendants to look after him because people needed their sleep. So one night he woke up the attendant, told him to set up a shrine, and he needed to do death practice for somebody who had just died. Then the next morning, the message came from that the king of Bhutan had died, and the Karmapa said, yeah, I've already done the necessary on the moment when it happened. When Katya was in the coma and they said that she could possibly die, then she had the 16th Karmapa coming to receive her. And then through all the things that happened, she didn't die. And she was quite disappointed when she came out the coma because it was just so perfect. So I think if it's a real guru, then they know. And then I had this very wonderful, unusual dream from Akon Rinpoche after he died, a couple of years after he died, reassuring that anyone who had the karmic link with him, he would be there when they die for sure and would look after them. So that was so vivid and so real. I really believe that 100%.
That's lovely, Ken. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Okay. Well, I think next week we start, those of you who are carrying on, not just here for the dying, then we do start meditation paramita. So I've seen many of you then. And for those of you who have been with us online or here live for these teachings on dying, there's so much more to learn, so much more to practice. But I hope this brief introduction will get you interested enough to really do the work, all the various stages of work. And you'll find that even if it's years and years or tens of years before you die, you'll find this work is very helpful for life, not just for death. You see your life through new eyes. And in many spiritual traditions, Christian, Buddhist, Sufi, there is what is called the mini-death, where we experience dying from this life while we're alive, and we kind of get reborn with brand new eyes into this life. It's a wonderful thing. Oh, thank you all very much. Take good care. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Ken. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ken.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Thank you, Ken.
Ken.
Bye-bye. Merci, Ken. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.